300 guests packed the ballroom at Whitmore Tech's annual gala. Crystal chandeliers scattered light over the polished floor, champagne flutes chimed in the air, and Boston's elite floated past in designer gowns and perfectly cut suits. At a table pushed off to one corner, a pair of 8-year-old twin girls in identical blue dresses sat quietly, plates of food untouched in front of them. Lily lifted her hand and waved at a cluster of children running past, her fingers shifting into quick, hopeful signs as she tried to greet them. The kids glanced over, puzzled, then drifted away without responding. Emma tugged gently on her sister's sleeve and signed slowly, her expression flat. "Nobody wants to play with us." Near one of the pillars, Marcus Cole adjusted the cuffs of his simple black suit. He was Whitmore Tech's head of building security, a job he'd held for 5 years. Tonight was the first time he'd been invited as a guest instead of working the event. He watched the twins' silent attempts to connect, watched the other children ignore them as if they weren't even there. After a moment, he set his glass down, crossed the room, and crouched so his eyes were level with theirs. His hands began to move in smooth, practiced American Sign Language. Both girls' faces lit up at once. Lily let out a soundless giggle, shoulders shaking. Emma's usual shyness cracked open into a small, genuine smile for the first time that evening. Across the ballroom, Claire Whitmore stopped mid-sentence. Her champagne flute trembled in her grasp. It took her a second to understand what she was seeing. Her daughters were laughing. A man she barely recognized had just done what 300 guests had failed to do all night. Her eyes stung. Tears blurred the chandeliers into stars. 2 years earlier, her world had shattered on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. David Whitmore had been on his way home after picking up the girls from their school for the deaf when a delivery truck ran a red light at the corner of Maple and 3rd. The impact killed him instantly. Lily and Emma, strapped into their car seats, walked away without a bruise. They did not understand why their father would not wake up. They did not understand why he never came home. David had been the bridge between Claire and her daughters. He was the only one in the family fluent in American Sign Language. He had learned it in college long before he met Claire because his younger brother had been born deaf. When their twin girls arrived in silence, David had already known how to step into their world. He had been their voice, their interpreter, the thread tying them to everything beyond their small hands. After the funeral, Claire had thrown herself into learning sign. She downloaded apps. She hired tutors. At midnight, when the girls were finally asleep, she sat at the kitchen table replaying the same videos over and over, fingers stiff and clumsy as she tried to match each movement. But ASL refused to stick. The language stayed foreign on her hands, slow and awkward, and the company she had built, Whitmore Tech, demanded everything. She had created it after the twins were born, driven by a fierce need to design accessibility software for deaf and hard-of-hearing users. The irony cut deep. She had launched a company to help people like her daughters communicate with the world, yet most days she could barely hold a full conversation with them herself. After David's death, Lily and Emma folded inward. They had always been quiet girls, but grief turned them into shadows. Lily still tried sometimes, reaching out to kids at birthday parties and family gatherings, her hands moving hopefully through the air. Hearing children would squint at her, confused, then drift away to games they understood. Emma simply stopped trying. She retreated into books and puzzles, things that asked nothing of anyone else. Most nights, Claire found her curled up in David's old sweater, clinging to the faint trace of his cologne. Every evening, Claire paused in the doorway of their bedroom and watched the twins sign to each other. She recognized fragments now, hungry, tired, scared, love, but their hands moved too quickly, too smoothly. The flow of their language was like a river she could see but not step into. Lying awake, staring at the dark ceiling, the same question gnawed at her. What kind of mother cannot speak to her own children? At the gala tonight, Claire had promised herself she would stay close. She'd reserved them a table near the stage, ordered their favorite foods, asked the event coordinator to check on them. But as the evening wore on, investors arrived. Board members appeared, journalists circled. Each conversation pulled her farther away from the twins, one handshake at a time. She kept looking back at their table, watching them sit quietly in those matching blue dresses, watching them fade into the blur of the crowd. She had failed them again. And then a man in an inexpensive black suit had crossed the room and made them smile. Marcus had been with Whitmore Tech since the building opened 5 years earlier. He started on the night shift, pacing the empty halls when everyone else had gone home, watching camera feeds, rattling doors to be sure they were locked. His steady reliability, his habit of doing whatever needed to be done without complaint, had earned him promotion after promotion until he ran the whole security team. He knew of Claire only from a distance. The young CEO who moved through the lobby at high speed, phone pressed to her ear, stress hidden behind a polished smile. He knew about the accident. Everyone did. The story had been all over the news. He knew her daughters, too. On days when childcare fell apart, Claire sometimes brought them to the office. The twins would sit in the lobby with coloring books while their mother sprinted between meetings. Most staff didn't know what to do with them. People would offer a quick smile, maybe a wave, then slip away. Marcus always stopped. He remembered one afternoon almost a year earlier, walking his rounds when he spotted Lily by the elevators, tears streaming down her face. Her hands flew through the air, signing frantically. People rushed past, eyes sliding away. No one understood. Marcus walked straight over and knelt in front of her, his dark suit jacket pulling across his shoulders. His hands moved in calm, practiced signs. "Are you looking for your mom? I can help you find her?" Lily's sobs cut off like someone had flipped a switch. Her eyes went wide with surprise. Then she nodded hard and grabbed his hand. They found Claire in a third-floor conference room. She burst into the hallway the second she saw her daughter, wrapping Lily in a shaking embrace. Her gaze lifted to Marcus, full of stunned relief. "You know sign language. My wife taught me," he'd said, his deep brown skin catching the fluorescent light as he straightened up. Then he'd returned to his duties without adding anything more. He hadn't mentioned that his wife, Rachel, had spent 10 years teaching at the Boston School for the Deaf. He hadn't explained that lung cancer had taken her when their daughter, Sophie, was only 5, or that he kept using ASL with Sophie because it made Rachel feel close, even when she was gone. Some stories were too heavy to unpack in a hallway. Tonight, Marcus had pulled his only suit from the closet. The black fabric was a little shiny at the elbows, pressed as neatly as he could manage. He had bought it for Rachel's funeral and worn it exactly 3 times since. The gala invitation had surprised him. Security never made the guest list, but someone in HR had noticed his 5-year work anniversary and decided he deserved one evening on the other side of the velvet rope. From the moment he arrived, he felt like he'd stepped into someone else's life. As a black man from Dorchester in a room full of venture capital smiles and old money accents, the distance between him and the crowd was louder than the music. The champagne tasted like something he couldn't pronounce. Conversations floated past about stock prices and second homes on the Cape. He counted the minutes until he could slip out without being rude. Then he saw the twins sitting alone. He watched Lily reaching out, signing at other kids who turned away. He watched Emma fold in on herself. He thought of Sophie, of the birthday parties where she'd been the only child talking with her hands, of the look she'd gotten, like she was strange or broken. Rachel would never have walked past a child like that. So he didn't either. He crossed the ballroom, knelt by the twins' table, and let his hands speak for him. On the far side of the room, Richard Lane stood beside Claire, a glass of scotch warming his hand. He was Whitmore Tech's chief financial officer, a role he had held for 3 years. At 45, with silver at his temples and a tailored suit that meant old money or very good credit, he cut the picture of a successful, distinguished executive. He had also been quietly in love with Claire since the day they met. He had never said it out loud. First, she'd been married, then she'd been wrapped in grief. He'd told himself to be patient. In his mind, he had rehearsed 100 versions of how it would unfold. He would step into the space David had left, offer stability, be the steady presence she and the girls needed. Over time, he would become indispensable, and then more. Now he watched the security chief kneeling at the twins' table, watched their faces glow with laughter, and a cold, sharp feeling twisted under his ribs. Claire's attention was no longer on investors or journalists. Her gaze had locked onto her daughters. Tears shimmered. Richard set his drink down and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Claire, darling, the investors from Singapore are asking for you. Let me take you over." She didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the corner table. "Who is that man?" Richard's jaw clenched. That is Marcus Cole. He runs building security. I have no idea why he is bothering the girls. He is not bothering them. Claire's voice barely rose above the music. He is talking to them. Really talking. She pulled away from his hand and headed across the room. Marcus noticed the CEO approaching and rose at once, heart kicking up. He'd forgotten himself. The CEO's children weren't his responsibility tonight. He was just a black security chief in a hand-me-down suit who had stepped out of line. "I'm sorry, Miss Whitmore," he said quickly. "I didn't mean to overstep. They were alone, and I thought—" Lily cut him off, her hands flying. "Mommy, he knows how to sign. He asked me what my favorite thing at the party is." Emma, who rarely spoke to strangers in any language, signed as well, eyes bright. "He said I have eyes like stars. Daddy used to say that too." Claire inhaled sharply. In 2 years, Emma had never mentioned David to anyone outside the family. Not once. She really looked at Marcus then. He was tall, with a broad chest and calloused hands, his deep brown skin smooth under the ballroom lights. His hair was cut in a neat fade, and his dark eyes were steady, kind. His suit wasn't expensive, but it was clean and pressed. He stood without posture games, without trying to impress anyone. "Thank you," she said, and the words cracked in the middle. "I have not seen them smile like this in a very long time." Marcus shifted his weight, a little embarrassed. "They're amazing girls," he signed and spoke. "You have every reason to be proud." Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Will you sit with us?" she signed. "Mommy doesn't know very many signs yet. It's hard to talk to her sometimes." She wasn't being cruel. She was just telling the truth. The words sliced through Claire anyway. Her cheeks burned with shame. Marcus saw her flinch. He turned back to Lily, his hands moving gently. "Your mom is learning," he signed. "That takes courage. Not everyone is brave enough to learn something new." Claire blinked hard. He had somehow hit the exact place where her guilt lived and softened it with a single sentence. Before she could answer, Richard appeared at her side again. "Claire, the investors are still waiting. This meeting is critical." His eyes flicked to Marcus with thinly veiled contempt. "I'm sure the security guard has other responsibilities to get back to." The message underneath was plain: "You don't belong here." Marcus met the CFO's gaze and held it, saying nothing. Then he turned back to the twins, signed a quick goodbye, and stepped away from the table. Watching him go, Claire felt something in her chest protest. After the gala ended and the last guests filtered out, Claire lingered in the lobby. Lily and Emma sat on a bench nearby, drooping with sleep but still buzzing with signed conversations about the man who talked like us. Claire told herself she was just waiting for the valet to bring her car around. Then Marcus came through on his final security check, tablet in hand, walking his usual route. "Mr. Cole," she called before she could lose her nerve. "Do you have a moment?" He approached, careful. "Of course, Miss Whitmore." She hesitated, searching for the right words. Finally, she asked the question that had sat in her throat all night. "Where did you learn to sign?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, his gaze dropping to his hands. "My wife taught me," he said. "She worked at the Boston School for the Deaf for 10 years. She believed every child deserved to be heard, whether they used their voice or their hands." Was. Claire heard the tense and felt it land. "She passed away 4 years ago," he added softly. "Lung cancer. Our daughter was 5. The words hit Claire like a punch, knocking the air out of her. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't know." "There's no reason you would," he replied. They stood in the quiet lobby, surrounded by echoing marble and glass, two strangers stitched together by loss. "My husband died 2 years ago," Claire said at last. "He was the one who knew sign language. He was their bridge to the world." She gestured toward the bench where Lily and Emma sat, leaning against each other. "Since he's been gone, I feel like I'm failing them every single day." Marcus listened, weighing each word. "After Rachel died," he said slowly, "I thought about letting sign language go. Every time I moved my hands, I saw her in front of me. It hurt too much. But then I realized something. For my daughter, signing isn't just a way to talk. It's connection. It's how she remembers her mother." He paused. "You're not failing your girls, Miss Whitmore. You're still here. You're still trying. That matters more than you think." Claire's eyes shone. 1,000 questions pressed at the back of her throat, but before she could ask any of them, Lily came running over, her small brown eyes bright, hands moving excitedly. "Mommy, Mr. Marcus has a daughter," she signed. "She knows sign too. Can we meet her? Can we be friends?" Marcus smiled. "Her name is Sophie. She's 9. He glanced at Claire. "She doesn't have many friends who sign. Most kids don't know how to talk with their hands." The offer hung in the air between them. Claire reached into her clutch, pulled out a business card, and handed it to him. Call me, she said. Maybe we can set something up. The girls could use a friend who understands them. Marcus took the card, his fingers rough against the glossy paper. And you, he said gently, could use someone who understands too. The honesty of it startled her. No one had asked what she needed in 2 years. I don't know, she admitted, but I think I'd like to find out. The following Saturday, Claire drove the twins to a small park in Brooklyn. Marcus had suggested it, a neutral place where kids could just be kids, without corporate name tags or watchful eyes. Claire spotted him immediately, standing near the swings with a girl about 9 years old at his side. His daughter's rich brown skin gleamed in the afternoon sun. Her tight curls were gathered into a puff at the back of her head, and her eyes were serious, taking everything in. She wore a simple floral dress and clutched her father's hand like an anchor. Sophie was nervous. Marcus had warned Claire. His daughter took time to warm up. She'd been disappointed too often by children who stared at her hands, then walked away. Lily and Emma tumbled out of the car before Claire had unbuckled her seatbelt. They ran towards Sophie and then stopped short, suddenly shy. Sophie watched them. They stared back. Then, Sophie lifted her hands and signed carefully. My name is Sophie. My mom taught me sign language. She's in heaven now. Emma's movements were slow but clear as she responded. My daddy is in heaven too, she signed. He taught us to fly kites. Lily jumped in, her hands quick. He made me a butterfly kite. It was purple. Sophie's face softened into a real smile. My mom made the best chocolate chip cookies, she signed back. I can show you the recipe if you want. Something shifted. The heaviness hanging around all 3 girls loosened and floated away. Within minutes, they were running toward the playground together, hands flashing in constant conversation, a whole world unfolding between them that no one else could see. Claire sat down on a bench beside Marcus. For a while, they just watched. Sophie is wonderful, Claire said eventually. Look at them. They've known each other for 5 minutes and they already act like they've been friends forever. Marcus nodded, his gaze following the girl's quick hands. Sophie's been lonely since Rachel passed, he said. She doesn't quite fit in at school. The other kids think it's weird when she talks with her hands. Lily and Emma, they're going through the same thing. Kids can be cruel without meaning to be. They don't understand what they can't hear. Claire watched her daughters laugh, faces lit from the inside. She couldn't remember the last time they'd looked so unguarded. Marcus, she said quietly, would you teach me to sign? I mean, really teach me. I've tried apps and videos and tutors, but it's not enough. I need someone who actually lives in the language. He hesitated. I'm not a teacher. You're a black dad who kept his wife's language alive for his daughter, she said. That makes you exactly the kind of teacher I need. He considered that for a long moment. Then he nodded once. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected. In the weeks that followed, a rhythm formed. Every Sunday, Claire brought the twins to meet Marcus and Sophie. Some days they met at the park. Other times they squeezed into Marcus's small apartment in Dorchester, where the furniture was worn, but the welcome was warm. Occasionally they gathered at Claire's townhouse in Back Bay, where Sophie stared in awe at the high ceilings and grand piano. The children wove themselves together quickly. Sophie appointed herself their ASL coach, teaching Lily and Emma new signs with gentle determination. Lily picked everything up fast, her expressive hands turning each word into a performance. Emma learned more slowly, but never forgot anything. Before long, they had inside jokes and little secret signs that only the 3 of them recognized. When Claire asked what they were giggling about, they would exchange conspiratorial looks and sign in unison, it's a sister thing. Sisters. The word hit Claire like sunlight, warm and almost too bright. Meanwhile, Marcus worked with Claire on the basics. Alphabet, simple phrases, everyday conversation. He was patient, correcting her clumsy fingers with a nod or a small smile, never making her feel foolish. She was relentless. Between lessons, she practiced in mirrors, in reflections on subway windows, at her kitchen counter late at night, determined to make her hands finally cooperate with her heart. One Sunday, after weeks of effort, Claire sat across from her daughters and signed a full sentence, hands shaking. I love you both so very much. Lily and Emma froze, stunned. Then they burst into tears and launched themselves into her arms, nearly knocking her backward. Daddy said that every night, Lily signed through her sobs. Claire held them as tightly as she could and made a silent vow. She would learn how to say everything they needed to hear. Across the room, Marcus watched, something warm and aching swelling in his chest. He thought of Rachel, of the way her whole face used to light up when one of her students finally understood something that had seemed impossible. She would have treasured this moment. That evening, his mother, Janet, called. She had been watching Sophie and wanted a full report. "So," she said, her tone teasing, "how was your afternoon with the CEO?" "It's not like that, Mom," Marcus protested. "Marcus, I may be old, but I'm not blind. You talk about this woman more than you've talked about anyone since Rachel. And Sophie can't stop talking about those twins." "We're just helping each other," he insisted. "That's all." Janet was quiet for a beat. "Rachel would want you to be happy," she said. "She wouldn't want you alone forever." Marcus glanced at the framed photo on his bookshelf. Rachel on their wedding day, laughing as she tried to sign "I do" with shaking hands. His own reflection hovered faintly over hers, a black man who had spent years walking the line between holding on and letting go. "I know," he said softly. "I'm just not sure I'm ready." Even as he said it, he wondered if it was still true. One Sunday in May, David's mother, Diane Whitmore, showed up at Claire's house without warning. Diane was in her mid-60s, elegant and composed, her grief tucked neatly behind good posture and tasteful jewelry. Losing her son had broken something in her, but she had poured what remained of her love into her granddaughters and into Claire. She paused just inside the back door when she arrived and took in the scene in the yard. Marcus stood in the grass with Lily and Emma, helping them assemble a kite. Sophie hovered at his elbow, issuing bossy instructions. Claire sat in a lawn chair nearby, practicing her signs, laughing every time she fumbled a movement, and one of the girls corrected her. Diane watched for a long moment, unseen. Then she walked outside. The children greeted her with hugs. Sophie hung back until Diane produced candy from her purse, at which point the girl's shyness evaporated. Marcus wiped his hands on his jeans and stood, suddenly aware he was facing David's mother. His heart thudded. "You must be Mrs. Whitmore," he said, offering his hand. She studied him, this broad-shouldered black man who had somehow slipped into the most fragile parts of her family's life, and then shook his hand firmly. "You're the one who makes my granddaughters smile," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied. "I hope that's... all right." Diane glanced at Claire. There was color in her cheeks now, a brightness in her eyes that had been missing for 2 years. "More than all right," Diane said. David always said the girls needed more people who understood them. Later, when the children went inside for lemonade, Diane and Claire sat together on the patio. "He's a good man," Diane said simply. "I know," Claire answered. "David would want you to be happy, dear," Diane continued. "He wouldn't want you alone forever." Claire's eyes filled. "I feel guilty," she admitted. "Like loving someone else means I'm betraying David's memory," but she couldn't finish. "You're not betraying anything," Diane said, squeezing her hand. "You're honoring what David cared about most, Lily and Emma's joy. He would be proud that you found someone who speaks their language." Claire looked toward the window where Marcus was lifting Sophie up so she could reach a glass from a high shelf. "I think I'm falling in love with him," she whispered. Diane smiled, soft and knowing. "I know," she said, "and from what I can see, he's falling right back." Richard Lane had been monitoring Claire's life for 3 years, her schedule, her moods, the rise and fall of her stress levels. He stayed late when she stayed late. He appeared with coffee when she seemed tired. He positioned himself as the reliable colleague, the safe harbor. Now some security chief was unraveling all of his careful planning. The first change he noticed came about a month after the gala. Claire seemed lighter. She smiled more. She checked her phone with a little secretive look. She left the office at a reasonable hour instead of staying until midnight. Then he saw them together. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Claire had brought the twins in because their regular caretaker was sick. From his office window, Richard watched as Marcus stopped in the lobby to sign with the girls. A moment later, Claire joined them. She laughed at something Marcus signed, touched his arm, and looked at him with a softness Richard had never earned from her. His hands curled into fists. That evening, he summoned Marcus to his office. "Mr. Cole," he began, voice smooth, "I've noticed you've been spending a great deal of time with Miss Whitmore and her daughters outside of work." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "That's correct. Is there an issue?" Richard leaned back, steepling his fingers. "This company has policies regarding relationships between employees at different levels, especially when one of those employees is the CEO." He let the words hang. "People talk, Mr. Cole. The board talks. It would be a shame if rumors of questionable conduct were to complicate Miss Whitmore's leadership." Marcus heard the threat clearly. This wasn't about some handbook rule. This was about jealousy. "My relationship with Miss Whitmore is personal," Marcus said evenly. "It has nothing to do with my job." Everything in this building concerns me, Richard replied. I'm the CFO. It's my responsibility to protect the company's interests and reputation. Is that what you call this? Marcus asked. Protecting the company? Richard's smile thinned. Call it whatever you like. Just remember where you stand. Your security. She runs a billion-dollar corporation. Think about what people will say. I think people should mind their own business, Marcus said. And I think you should too. He turned and walked out before Richard could answer. That night, Marcus told Claire what had happened. He didn't want to cause trouble, but he also refused to keep secrets from her. Claire's reaction startled him. Instead of panic, anger flared. Richard has no right to interfere in my personal life, she said. He works for me, not the other way around. I know, Marcus said, but he isn't wrong about how things look. You're the CEO. I'm just the guy who checks the security cameras. People will talk. Let them, Claire snapped. I spent 2 years doing what everyone expected, being composed, being appropriate, pouring myself into work as the grieving widow. I did everything right, and I was miserable. She took his hand, her voice steady. You make my girls happy. You make me happy. I am not giving that up because Richard Lane's pride is hurt. I don't want to make things harder for you, Marcus said quietly. You're not making things harder, she answered. You're making them better. She stepped closer. Stay, she whispered. He stayed. Richard wasn't done. 3 weeks later, an anonymous email landed in every Whitmore Tech board member's inbox. The subject line read, Concerns about CEO conduct. The message accused Claire of engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. It claimed her judgment was compromised. It questioned whether she was still fit to lead the company her late husband had helped build. The board called an emergency meeting. Claire got the summons while she, Marcus, and the girls were eating dinner together. Her face drained of color as she read. What is it? Marcus asked. Richard, she said. He did exactly what he threatened. The meeting was scheduled for the next morning. There wasn't much to prepare. The facts were straightforward. She was seeing someone. He worked for the company. There was no explicit policy against it, but optics, especially for a female CEO in a male-dominated industry, carried weight. Marcus offered to come. Claire refused. This is my battle, she said. I have to walk into that room alone. But when she arrived at the boardroom, she discovered she wasn't alone at all. Sitting at the table, composed and unreadable, was Diane Whitmore. Claire had almost forgotten. Diane was not just her mother-in-law. She was one of Whitmore Tech's original investors and a board member. The meeting started. Several board members voiced concerns. They asked careful questions about Claire's relationship with Marcus, about whether it affected her work, about how it might look to employees and shareholders. Claire listened to every word. Then she stood. I know you have questions about my personal life, she said. Let me address them directly. She told them about Lily and Emma. She described 2 years of silence, of her daughters sitting alone in rooms full of people, of birthday parties where they were invisible. At the gala, she said, 300 guests filled that ballroom. My daughters were in the corner, alone, being ignored. Then a man I barely knew walked across that room, knelt down, and spoke to them with his hands. She swallowed. He gave them something I hadn't been able to give them in 2 years. Someone who understood. She looked each board member in the eye. Marcus Cole teaches me sign language so I can speak to my own children, she said. His daughter is like a sister to my girls. If that makes me unfit to run this company, so be it. But I will not apologize for choosing my daughter's happiness over someone's petty jealousy. Her gaze landed on Richard. He looked away. Diane spoke next. I've watched Claire raise my granddaughters alone for 2 years, she said. I've seen her sacrifice for this company and for those girls. David would be proud of the mother she is, and he would be grateful that she found someone who speaks his daughter's language. She let the silence stretch. If anyone here believes Claire's personal life disqualifies her from leadership, she said, I invite you to call for a vote of no confidence right now. No one moved. No one spoke. Richard's face burned red. He gathered his papers and slipped out without another word. The meeting ended. Claire had won. She drove straight to Marcus's apartment. He was waiting on the front steps, having worn a path in the carpet that morning with his pacing. When she stepped out of the car, he could see the traces of tears on her face. But she was smiling. What happened? He asked. I told them the truth, she said, and they listened. He pulled her into his arms. She pressed her face against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I was so scared, she whispered. I thought I might lose everything. You didn't lose anything, he said. You stood up for what matters. She leaned back to look at him. You matter, she signed and said. Sophie matters. This family we're building matters. I am not going to let anyone take that away. Marcus cupped her face, his callous thumbs brushing away the last of her tears. I love you, he said. I didn't plan on it, but I do. Claire's smile broke wide, tears returning for a different reason this time. I love you too, she answered. I didn't plan on it either. Inside the apartment, 3 little girls peeked from the window. When they saw the embrace, they erupted in silent cheers, hands flying. 6 months slipped by. Then a year. The two families braided together in all the ways that counted. Sunday dinners became sacred, sometimes in Claire's polished Back Bay dining room, sometimes in Marcus's cozy Dorchester kitchen. Holidays were shared, birthdays were joint operations. Marcus kept his job as head of security at Whitmore Tech. Claire offered him other roles, promotions that would have come with new titles and fewer side-eyed glances from executives. He turned them down gently but firmly. I'm proud of what I do, he told her. I don't need a different title to feel worthy of you. She loved him even more for it. Sophie, Lily, and Emma settled into their sisterhood. They built their own language inside ASL, nicknames, jokes, gestures that belonged only to them. They bickered like sisters too, but the fights burned out quickly, always resolved before bedtime. One night, Emma signed something that made Claire cry. I miss Daddy, Emma said, but I'm happy we have Marcus and Sophie now. Is that okay? Claire pulled her close. That's more than okay, she answered. Your daddy would be so happy you're happy. Marcus continued tutoring Claire in ASL. She graduated from simple phrases to full conversations. She still stumbled, still needed to slow down and start again sometimes, but her daughters no longer needed a bridge to speak to their own mother. Janet Cole slipped easily into the role of extra grandmother. She taught the twins how to bake cookies, told them stories about Rachel, the woman whose language shaped their lives even though they would never meet her. Diane stayed close as well, a steady link between what had been and what was now. On her mantle, a photo of David remained, right beside a new picture of Claire and Marcus with all 3 girls. 2 months after the board meeting, Richard Lane resigned from Whitmore Tech. The official announcement mentioned a new opportunity. Everyone knew better. He couldn't bear to watch Claire build a life with someone else. On the twins' 9th birthday, Marcus proposed. It happened in Claire's backyard, beneath strings of balloons and crepe paper. Sophie had helped pick out the ring, turning it over in her hands until she found one that felt just right. Lily had painted a banner that read, "Say yes, Mommy," in uneven letters. Emma had practiced filming with Claire's phone for days to make sure she captured every second. Claire said yes before he even finished the question. Their wedding took place the following spring in the Boston Public Garden. The guest list was small: family, close friends, a few colleagues who had stood by them. All 3 girls served as flower girls, scattering petals down the aisle while signing a running commentary to each other. Marcus wore a new suit this time, navy blue instead of black. Claire said it made his eyes look even warmer. When it was time for vows, they spoke and signed at the same time. I promise to love you, Marcus said, his hands steady. I promise to love your daughters as my own. I promise to spend the rest of my life helping you find the words, even when words fail. Claire signed back through happy tears. I promise to love you, she answered. I promise to love Sophie as my own. I promise we will face everything together, speaking the same language always. The reception took place at a restaurant known for serving deaf patrons, with staff who signed and visual cues instead of shouted announcements. Janet and Diane sat side by side, dabbing their eyes and comparing notes on grandchildren. Sophie gave a toast, signing as a family friend voiced her words for the hearing guests. 2 years ago, I didn't have any sisters, she signed. Now I have 2. 2 years ago, my dad was sad all the time. Now he smiles every day. She turned to Claire. Thank you for making my dad happy again, she signed, and thank you for being my other mom. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, as the sun slid down over Boston Harbor, Claire found Marcus standing on the terrace alone. What are you thinking about? She asked. Rachel, he said with a small smile. How much she would have loved today. Claire threaded her fingers through his. She's watching, Claire said. I'm sure of it. And David? Marcus asked. Claire looked up at the first stars pricking the sky. He's watching too, she said. And I think they're both pretty pleased with how this turned out. Inside, the 3 girls were teaching Janet and Diane how to sign the lyrics to a pop song. Their laughter spilled through the open doors. Marcus pulled Claire closer. Ready to go home? He asked. She smiled. I already am. 3 years later, on a warm June evening, the Cole Whitmore family gathered in the backyard again to celebrate the twins' 12th birthday. The garden glowed under strings of lights Marcus had hung himself. Paper lanterns swayed in the soft breeze. On the long table, a cake waited, decorated with 3 names spelled out in ASL fingerspelling: Sophie, Lily, and Emma. Friends from school mixed with relatives. Over the years, many of them had picked up at least basic sign language, a ripple effect of having the girls in their lives. Sophie, now 14, had grown into a confident young woman who interpreted ASL at school events. She had started talking about becoming a teacher like her mother. Lily remained fearless, already asking questions about studying abroad someday. Emma had bloomed into an artist. Her drawings lined nearly every wall in the house. Claire stood on the edge of the yard, watching her daughter sign and laugh with friends. Her own hands moved easily now as she joined conversations, the language that once felt impossible flowing from her as naturally as breath. Marcus slipped his arms around her from behind. "What's on your mind?" he asked. "That I'm the luckiest woman alive," she signed and said. He kissed her temple. "I'm pretty sure I'm the lucky one," he replied. Sophie stood on a chair and clinked her glass of lemonade for attention. Every year since that first joint party, she had given a little birthday speech. It had quietly become tradition. "Okay, everybody." She signed and spoke at once. Another year, another speech. She grinned. "When I was 9, I met 2 little girls at a park," she said. "They didn't talk with their mouths. They talked with their hands, just like me." She looked at Lily and Emma. "I didn't know it then, but that day changed everything. I got sisters. I got a second mom." She glanced at Claire, who was already crying again. "And most important, my dad started smiling again," she finished. She raised her glass. "To Lily and Emma, happy birthday to my favorite twins in the whole world. I love you both more than words can say." Good thing we have another way to say it. Applause and flying hands filled the yard. Later, after the guests left and the girls disappeared upstairs for a birthday sleepover, Marcus and Claire sat together on the porch swing. The sky above them glittered with stars. "Do you ever wonder?" Claire asked quietly. "What would have happened if you hadn't walked across that ballroom?" Marcus thought about the question. "I'd still be lonely," he said. "You'd still be struggling. The girls would still feel invisible. And instead we found each other," she finished. He threaded his fingers through hers. "Sometimes the best things happen when somebody is brave enough to take the first step," he said. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for taking that step," she signed and said. "Thank you for not walking away when it got hard." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the distant, muffled giggles of 3 girls upstairs and watching the stars move slowly overhead. 5 years earlier, Claire had stood in this same yard and wondered if she would ever feel whole again. Marcus had paced the narrow halls of his apartment, wondering if he would ever stop missing Rachel. They had both been lonely. They had both been broken. Then a stranger had knelt beside 2 little girls in blue dresses and let his hands speak, and everything had shifted. Sometimes Claire liked to imagine that somewhere above them, David and Rachel were watching. Maybe they had nudged things along, a pair of guardian angels quietly playing matchmaker. Or maybe it was simpler, 2 people recognizing each other's pain and deciding to help carry it. Either way, Claire was grateful for Marcus, for Sophie, for the family they had built together. "Home is where the hands move," she signed to him, an old inside joke from her early lessons. He smiled and signed back. "Then we're exactly where we belong." Inside the house, 5 hearts beat in sync. 3 daughters dreamed in a language of motion and light. 2 parents held each other close, finally at peace. The silence that wrapped around them was not empty. It was full of love.